I think that we are going to see at first, we're going to notice the job losses before we notice the benefits. And I think in software, in programming, we're probably already seeing them. Some of that may not be AI, it just be that companies were hoarding labor. That is, they had workers that they didn't really need. But a couple of years ago, it had been a tight job market. They didn't want to cut back for fear that they would need them. And now they're saying, we really don't need them and are not going to need them. But I don't see a lot of cutbacks outside of programming right now. And the programmers, I think, will end up, I know that they're already accepting lower pay. The AI Grapple, the future begins.
Welcome to the AI Grapple. My name is Kate vanderVoort, founder and CEO of the AI Success Lab. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Bill Conerly, an economist who connects the dots between the economy and real business decisions. Bill has a PhD in economics from Duke University, runs Conerly Consulting, and has written more than 30 articles on AI and business for Forbes. In this conversation, we explore where AI is really creating value, why chatbots are not the main economic story, and how specialised AI tools are quietly reshaping healthcare, sales, and everyday operations. Let's dive right in. Hi, Bill. Welcome to the AI Grapple.
Great to be chatting with you, Kate.
Why don't we get started by you giving us a bit of background about who you are, a bit about your AI journey, and how you've come to be here with me on the podcast today.
Yeah, well, when I was 16 years old, I decided to become an economist, as so many 16-year-olds do. But I had a good head for math, but I thought math was boring. I was interested in politics and business. That led me into economics. I spent the first half of my career as a corporate economist doing corporate planning and forecasting. In the second half, I've been consulting, trying to help businesses understand how changes in the economy impact their business. And I think of it a lot as helping business leaders figure out what should be on their radar screen, what should be on their to-do list, not so much rolling up my sleeves and saying, do this or do that, but simply saying, this is an issue. And sometimes I'll say, other companies have been dealing with this through these strategies, and you can sort of figure out what's there. Then AI, actually, even before that, I had been talking to people in the computer science area, math and computer science and neural networks, and I was sort of aware of it. And there was one voice who kept saying, it's going to be big, going to be big, going to be big. And I was like, yeah, didn't I hear that 20 years ago? And then ChatGPT drops, and all of a sudden, everybody is saying, oh, this is big. So that's how I got to where I am today. Most of my work is still more on the economics in general, forecasting and business implications, but I get so many questions about AI. I've written a series of articles on Forbes.com about business and AI and economics and AI. So I don't think of myself as an AI expert, but as somebody who can maybe connect the dots between the economy and AI.
And I love that. And that's why I'm so excited about this conversation, because there's not a lot of people that I've heard speaking about that other than, business leaders in the tech world. So I'm really interested to hear, especially given so many people are talking about this AI bubble at the moment. I'm really keen to explore that further with you. As you said, you've written a lot about the economy and AI. So if we start with the big picture, what signals stand out to you at the moment about the way that AI is shaping business activity, decision making? What are you seeing around that?
Yeah. When I think, gee, what am I seeing around that? The words that come to my mind are vague, random, scattered. People are talking about it, and some folks are doing stuff, but mostly it's sort of like don't know what to do, trying a little bit here, trying a little bit there. And there are many educated people, at least the folks that I run into, who don't think that AI is the same as ChatGPT. And so we're very, very early days. And what we're doing now with things like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, whatever, is not what's going to have a big economic impact. I think what we're doing is having an impact, but the big impact is not going to come from people asking questions of their favorite AI bot.
And so, where is that going to come from? Because I agree. I think the whole large language model is kind of an interim phase as everybody gets used to AI, and we're obviously moving down more of an agentic AI pathway. So, what are you seeing as the early signals around where we're heading? And do you have a view on the economic impacts of where it is that we're heading?
Yeah, two questions. But the first, I think, is I think we're heading to specialized applications that help people do specific tasks. I went to my doctor for an annual checkup. Our conversation was being listened to by an AI system. And at the end, after I was gone, the AI drafted notes for my medical record that the doctor then reviewed, edited as needed, and put in that. And in the health system that he's part of, they think that they are saving 8 to 10 minutes of doctor time per patient. And that is just huge. And that my doctor doesn't need to know anything about AI. All he needs to know is, okay, you turn on the phone, and when they give you a draft, you're supposed to look at it and edit it. And the same thing is being used by salespeople. Salespeople are being ragged on by their managers regularly about put notes in the database, put notes in the CRM so we know what this conversation was about. And a good salesperson doesn't want to enter data in the CRM. So they've got that. And then there are more, and those are very general. Then there are more specialized apps. I was speaking to a group of electrical contractors, and they're being pitched now. Hey, if you need to estimate a job, you put the blueprints in along with your hourly labor cost and your local cost of materials, and the AI gives you a bill of materials and how many hours it will take, you know. So those specialized apps will be used by people who won't know anything about AI. In some cases, they may not even know that they're using AI. So I think that's where we're going.
Yeah, and we're starting to hear more about that concept of ambient AI, which is just AI always on in the background, always listening, that, as you say, will just be seamless in our life. And it won't even be I have to go and proactively use AI. It's just always on.
Yeah, and we've been using variations of it. I get in my car and I use Google Maps, and I don't know what's behind Google Maps. Is it AI? Is it not AI? Whatever. It tells me where to go, where to turn. That's all. But
Yeah, and it
you want
has to be AI because it's often predicting, how long you've got to get somewhere based on traffic and based on triangulation of other data. So, that we've had AI used on us, or sorry, used to serve us
to
for a long time in social media and, Amazon, Netflix, all of those kind of platforms. But yes, a big shift of now that intelligence is available to everybody.
yeah. But I didn't get to the second part of your question, which was what does it mean for the overall economy? And when ChatGPT came out, I turned to the books on my shelf about the Industrial Revolution in the 1700s. What is interesting, ChatGPT, the GPTs, you may have to help me. Generative, pre-programmed,
Pre-trained, pre-trained
pre-trained
transformer.
transformer, right? Um, well, economists 20, 30 years ago started using GPT in a different sense, general purpose technology. And the idea is a water pump is a specific purpose technology. Steam power is a general purpose technology, and it can run water pumps, factory machinery, ships at sea, locomotives. And the economists started looking at general purpose technologies with many applications. And I'm like, oh, this sounds like what we're getting at too. Chat GPT is a general purpose technology. And what I learned from the history, relearned from, it's been a couple of years since I was in graduate school, is that the dominant thing that happens is the cost of making things goes down And companies that bring their costs down, they'll try to keep a little bit of that or portion of that as profit margin, but they're also cutting their prices to grow their share of the market. So the dominant thing is that prices come down more than wages. Now, there are always some people who are losers whenever there's a change, whether it's AI or any change in the environment. There's somebody who was very well positioned for the old environment, not well positioned for the new environment. But that in the aggregate, and it's tough for those folks, but in the aggregate, the gains from having more efficient production of goods and services more than offsets in the aggregate those costs. So I'm very optimistic about how AI is going to help us as it's implemented, but with the proviso that not everybody is going to be able to thrive in the new AI world. Does that make sense, Kate?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get to that part in just a moment, but I'm going to ask a very short question. So, are we in an AI bubble?
A bubble. It's hard to know if you're in a bubble when you're in the bubble.
That's what makes it a bubble, isn't it?
Yeah. The spending that we're doing on data centers is huge, but you need the data center in order to use the AI. And with that vision I have of specific applications that, people won't even know they're using AI, those in the background are going to be getting in touch with OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and to do that. And I think we really will need the data centers. Will the stock prices go overboard? Yeah, probably some of them. I'm not going to forecast which prices are too high, which prices are too low. But I'm guessing that some of today's prices that seem high will prove to be too low. And some of them that are too high will prove to be too high. That's how things
I'm
work.
definitely not an economist, and I'm probably going to sound a little silly asking this question, but I'm going to ask it because it's percolating in my head. So I think some of the red flags that I see as a layperson who doesn't really understand all of the economic impacts and the kind of global impact of this is you look at all of these big companies that are signing contracts worth billions and
Yeah. Yeah.
trillions of dollars.
Right.
And a lot of these contracts are swapping, it's committing to a certain amount of purchasing
Yeah.
of whether it's
Yeah.
CPUs or
Yeah.
data center usage, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's something in all of that where there's just a lot of swapping and things being written on paper that doesn't necessarily stack up when I hear and see that going on. And I guess the other element of that is things like, and again, I'll get the numbers wrong, but OpenAI have committed trillions of dollars to every company that sells and provides CPUs, data storage, and it's more than double what it is that they're actually going to make in the same time frame. So how does all of that work? Because that's to me where I guess I wonder how sustainable that is and how
Yeah.
that is going to play out. Can you break that down for us
Yeah.
non-economists?
I worry a little bit that it's on the financial side, a house of cards, that you hear that one of these companies is getting a major investment. Well, the investment is access to the investor's data center and computing power or chips. Is that really an investment or a barter transaction? The financials can go very bad, but the substance to me is, hey, is the AI data center providing value? And I think there's huge value from the apps that are coming that we have now and that are coming, which use AI in the background. Huge value. Given that there's huge value, I think that we'll continue to have them. Some of the companies may have financial structures that are unsustainable, but the underlying models, the underlying data centers will be there. So I don't go speculating in AI companies. And I think that there could be a little bit of carnage there, but I think the underlying economics are sound that here's something valuable that people, companies will pay for and it's worth doing.
Well, that's one less thing I need to worry about, so I'll take that one off my
I
list.
can throw others on your list if your worry list is getting too short, Kate.
The other interesting thing at a much more micro level, and I've been talking a lot to businesses here about this, is everybody's a vibe coder now. So we're seeing this explosion of apps and websites and things that are just being whipped up overnight with no real business and not necessarily, the data security and payment gateways and all the things that are required to make that work well. And I think at a much smaller level, we're going to see a lot of businesses spring up and disappear very quickly over the
Yeah.
next couple of years.
Yeah. And in the United States in the early 90s, there were like 800 different companies making automobiles. Well, Ford survived, General Motors survived, a few others survived. But whenever there's something new, a lot of people are saying, "Oh, I think I know how to make cars, or I think I know how to make apps." And a few of them will be right and they'll succeed, and there'll be a lot of failures along the way. But, life is a trial and error process. Evolution is a trial and error process. And we're going to see plenty of outfits that look good and fail, but those that survive are going to be very, very good.
All right, next worry on the list. A lot of people are obviously very nervous about job losses. And in a lot of the work that we do, which is that culture change that's required in a company, we always create the space for people to bring up their fears, because if they're stuck in fear, they certainly can't see the opportunity that AI provides. So, from an economic lens, what do you see as realistic and what's overblown when we start looking at AI and jobs and the impact on employment?
Yeah. I think that we are going to see at first, we're going to notice the job losses before we notice the benefits. And I think in software, in programming, we're probably already seeing them. Some of that may not be AI, it just be that companies were hoarding labor. That is, they had workers that they didn't really need. But a couple of years ago, it had been a tight job market. They didn't want to cut back for fear that they would need them. And now they're saying, yeah, we really don't need them, and are not going to need them. But I don't see a lot of cutbacks outside of programming right now. And the programmers, I think, will end up, well, I know that they're already accepting lower pay. But the other thing that happens is, have you seen a website that really is lousy, that has sub state of the art user interface that could be so much better if some programmer would just add this feature, get rid of that, and blah, there's a lot of technical debt in programming today. And what companies should be saying is, okay, what would give our customers and our suppliers and other business partners a better experience? And let's find a software developer who knows how to use the AI tools, and tell him or her, go to town, get us a good website. That's eventually going to happen, and that's going to absorb some of the people who lose their jobs.
And we're
In
also
terms of,
moving,
go ahead.
sorry, just on that point, we're also moving into an era, marketing's obviously my background, of hyper personalization. And there's a lot of talk about consumer experience that is more personalized than we've ever been able to do before. And that's actually going to require some technical capability to make that happen as well. So that's actually one area where I think some of the displacement may be absorbed, but we're probably not quite there yet on defining what that looks like. So it's always about that net effect of jobs might be lost here, and the ones that are created, does it happen at the same time, or is it for the same people?
Right, right. And yeah, usually not at the same time and not the same people. But I think net, we're going to be, without a doubt, better off.
That's
The
interesting. Why do you say that? So you say overall you think we're going to have more jobs created than lost through this
Well,
time?
well, I'm not going to say more jobs, how about more income? Even better language is more purchasing power. because I think that prices will come down. Wages in some areas may come down, but I think prices will come down farther relative to wages. Now, the actual inflation rate depends on monetary policy, and I don't think we want to go down that rabbit hole. But if you just think of prices relative to wages, I think we're going to see an improvement that prices come down relative to wages, which means our standard of living is better. So you go back to the early industrial revolution and you automated the spinning wheels and then the weaving looms and fabric got cheaper. People started having 2 or 3 changes of clothes. I don't know how many dresses do you have in your closet these days?
Too
It's
many.
like so, and the people not only ended up buying more of the stuff that got cheap, but they had money left over even after they bought their 3rd suit of clothes, and they were buying more furniture, more candles for lighting, and there was demand in all of the other kinds of goods. So people, I think, are going to be better off because of this. There are some fears of one company is going to take all the profits, but we're in a competitive world, and businesses want to grow their markets. And if they've got a fat profit margin, they'll start cutting prices to gain market share. So I think that people will end up better off.
Well, that's really interesting. There you go. You've taken another worry off my list, Bill.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I mean, that certainly hasn't been how I've seen where I think we're going. So it'll be, and I think the thing is, no one really knows at this stage. But I mean, some of the things that come up often are around, there's no doubt there's a proportion of the population. We're going to see the first trillionaire solopreneur in our lifetime. We're going to see these really small companies making extraordinary amounts of money. And there's certainly a lot of people who will do well out of this time. But I do fear that there is a percentage of the population that will be displaced employment wise and won't be able to find a new a new place for employment. And so, because there's a lot of those models that are being explored, like universal basic income or taxing companies that replace large amounts of people with AI, taxing those companies to support those who are displaced. Have you looked into any of those models, and do you think any of those will be necessary?
Just a little bit, and whether they're necessary kind of depends upon what other considerations you want to think about. The folks that I am most worried about are older. I know somebody who has spent a life in what we call corporate investor relations, and she has been getting financial statements from the corporate treasurer, and she writes a press release about it. So she is translating numbers into words and been doing this for 20 or 30 years. I think I'm told she's good at it. But what do you do if you're 50 years old and this is what you've been doing, day after day? And now the AI can do that. Yeah, you want some human eyeballs, looking at the draft that the AI did, but that is maybe an hour's worth of work rather than 2 days worth of work. And older people tend to, I'm speaking as one myself, tend to be a little less flexible. Many of them are going to say, okay, I don't want to go on the job market with my skills at this age. I'll just retire early at a lower income than I had hoped for. Some of them may be in difficult straits because of that. But
Can I just add
go
on that point? It's interesting because everyone says, "Oh, digital natives, the young people, they'll be fine with
right.
AI," and it's the older, more mature folk that are going to struggle. Just purely anecdotally, in what I'm seeing, in a lot of the businesses that we're working in, do you know a lot of the more mature workers are like, "Bring it on! If I have got some super level intelligence that's going to help me do my job," and maybe they see it as I have my wisdom and experience, and this is actually going to help me do that faster, more efficiently, better quality. And they almost see that they can ride this out through the rest of their career. We're actually seeing quite a bit of resistance from younger people within workplaces. And it's because they're worried about the environmental impact. They're worried about intellectual property and copyright. They're worried about, privacy and protecting more vulnerable communities or making sure that it doesn't disconnect them from the humans, the customers. And I found that really surprising because I had assumed it would be the other way around as well. But just purely anecdotally, there's some of the things that I'm seeing within workplaces here in Australia. And we have an online membership, and the average age of our members online is absolutely 40, if not 50 plus. And so they're business owners, consultants, marketers who have really embraced this and can see the benefits. So it's just an interesting, I guess, a different perspective in what we're seeing anecdotally out in the market.
Yeah. I think some of what you described might be, and this is just a guess on my part, that an AI discussion is a reflection of a person's personality. And some people tend to be optimistic. I confess I'm an optimist in case you haven't figured it out. But I have friends who tend to see the dim side of things. And yeah, what's the environmental cost and all of those other issues, and tend to take a dim view of everything that has come along, from cell phones to social media to AI. Everything that's different is going to make things worse. So I think we need to do a
You
little
need new
filtering
friends,
there.
Bill.
Well, I've got some on both sides.
Good. So just on that, there has been a lot of early evidence that entry-level roles in high AI exposure fields are definitely shrinking. When we look at young people and, my kids are 9 and 11, so by the time they finish school, this AI transition will have happened and the new normal will be normal, and that's the world they'll be entering into. But young people who are leaving school and university now are in a really uncertain time. So, what should young professionals and the businesses that are hiring them, what should they be looking for to really respond to the transition that we're going through?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a guy on Twitter X named Rune who recently said nobody should be giving or receiving career advice at this time because everything's so uncertain. And I see the uncertainty, but what do you do if you got an 18 or 19-year-old and that person is not supposed to receive career advice? Go sit on a beach for a year and wait for things to settle down. Uh, I have a couple of thoughts on this, but I don't consider myself quite the expert here, so take them with a grain of salt. I see two paths. One is for the person to go into a field that is going to be AI resistant. I won't say AI proof, but slow. Today, it's hard to find plumbers, electricians, people do things with their hands. And some of the new construction stuff may get roboticized, but a buddy of mine lives in a house built in 1890, wanted to remodel the bathroom, and the contractor says, I have no clue what's behind the wall. I can't tell you what it's going to take until I find out what's behind the wall. The AI doesn't know what's behind the wall. It doesn't have records going back to 1890. So we still need people doing things with their hands. And it's been hard to find here in the United States. I don't know about Australia, but here in the United States, kids were told, oh, you need a university degree. You gotta keep going on. And now we have a lot of people with university degrees who aren't much good for anything. But it's hard to find somebody to service a dishwasher or a car or that kind of thing. So one approach for young people is, hey, do something, that's a physical sort of stuff. The other thing is to be like those older folks you were referring to and say, I want to learn the tools. And if you go into a job and you have a repetitive process that you're doing several times, how can we automate this? How can we use AI or some other tool to make this less of a time sink? And if it's repetitive, it's probably not very interesting. So that's, I think, a skill for sort of the office workers. And there are many, if it's a call center, and there are some customer service, call centers with hundreds or thousands of employees. So an outfit like that, finds the technology to help their customer service reps. But if you are only one person at a business doing, say, accounts payable, the bills come in from your service providers, from your suppliers, and you have to get those checks cut. Nobody's creating the AI app for you to do this more efficiently. So you need to go looking. You need to go saying, okay, here's the task that is taking up a bunch of my time, and I'm just going to go find one that does that. And that's a good strategy for businesses. But I hope you don't mind me asking you a question, because
Sure.
I see some companies where a person does an app here, like the salesman creates an order, and then the person who's doing production scheduling has an app. And then the person doing purchasing has an app to take the order into the purchasing needs. And they're different apps and they don't talk to each other. But at other companies, they say we need an integrated system that looks at everything. And then they have to get buy in from this outfit, that outfit, and they find what seems to be the perfect system. And then one of the people involved says, well, gee, I have this one special need that this system doesn't accomplish. Do you see that with the companies you have? Do you recommend that they do sort of piecemeal, let employees find their best apps, or that they slow things down and get one giant app that runs the whole business?
I think it's different in every company or every business, but I do think the writing's on the wall at the moment, and it's still very early days. But this whole vibe coding, you can build and create something literally in a matter of hours just through natural language. I do think is seriously going to to disrupt the SaaS industry. So this whole we pay an enormous amount in licenses to do, as you've talked about, providing apps for different departments, and then how do we string those all together? I do think that we're moving into a place where businesses will create exactly what they need themselves, and it will have a bit of Salesforce and a bit of the accounting platform and a bit of the scheduling, and it will bring all of those things together. Now, as I said, very early days, but I do think that there is the potential for that to be how particularly smaller businesses that maybe are in a less regulatory environment,
Yeah.
that is a potential. But I think every company is different. One of the biggest challenges we have at the moment is that the majority of companies want to stay in the Microsoft environment, which is where they've set up, they've set up camp, and we don't want to go outside of that environment. And it's the least effective AI that's available right now. And so there's a lot at play at the moment. But just about every platform that we all use on a daily basis, whether it's Xero for accounting or Canva for design, all of them are integrating AI into those apps
Yeah. Right.
already. So I always recommend to companies that that's the first place to look, is where you've already invested. Have a look at what the AI capability is there, and really wring the juice out of that before you start going and looking at other alternatives.
Yeah. Years ago, I wrote an article about, I think it was called something like six college courses that will make anybody employable. Maybe it was an overly aggressive headline, but one of the things I suggested everybody take was one course in computer programming, even if they did not want to be programmers, because I'd run into people in the business world who just were not thinking in terms of this data can be transformed into this data and combined with that data and divided by this other thing. And they just didn't have a view of how the data movement and calculations could be. And I think that today, with the vibe coding, having that sense that, oh, we could move numbers from here and divide them by that, gives a person a leg up over somebody who's just trying to do things the way they've always been done.
And even using that kind of a concept to unlock data across an organization is hugely powerful. So, to be able to create a dashboard that gives you a view on everything that's happening in your company or your business, we're going to be able to personalize a lot more of those experiences within organizations, which I think's exciting. I think it's going to cause a lot of disruption, and I think there'll be some very big fails along the way. I think, there's the potential there for that to really disrupt the way that we've always done business. And I think it's one of the things we see a lot of at the moment is people or companies trying to overlay AI onto systems and processes and workflows that don't naturally fit well with AI. And so it's going to be a bumpy ride for a while as companies navigate, do we keep doing things the way we always have, or do we need to now completely look at our systems and processes through the lens of AI?
And if you wanted to lay blame, you'd say, should we blame the AI or should we blame the workflows, which really never made sense in the first place?
Yeah, I have said more than once that AI breaks a lot of things that really need to be broken. And even at a big, the whole education system could really use a shakeup. The whole health system could really use a shakeup.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
um,
I'm with you.
AI is doing a lot of that. And that's where a lot of the discomfort comes from. Now, to go dark just for a moment, you recently reviewed the book, If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies, which is a classic headline.
Yes, isn't that a wonderful headline?
Wonderful headline. Makes me want to go find out what it's about. But when experts forecast extreme outcomes, which this book sounds fairly extreme, how do you evaluate the real risks for businesses and the wider economy? Because I think you mentioned earlier that everyone's sort of flying blind at the moment and doesn't really have much idea about how to approach this. So if business leaders are listening right now, how do you recommend that they evaluate the risks?
Yeah. Um, well, the thesis of that book, If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies, is that AI will take off and basically take control. And I had heard that theory years ago and poo-pooed it and continued to think, nah, nah, nah. And then this book made me less skeptical of that theory. I'm not a doom and gloomer, but I think there are some things that concern interpretability is the sort of AI subsector that asks the question, why did the AI say what it said rather than something else? And if you ask a man or woman walking down the street, why does the AI say this instead of that? You'll probably hear, I don't know. But if you ask a real expert in AI, why does it say this and that? What you'll hear is, we don't know. Not just I don't know, but we don't know. The whole profession doesn't know. And that actually justifies being nervous. We don't know why it's doing what it is. And there have been some instances where it was maybe keying on race or gender in sorting through resumes. Uh, and it's just a mystery. And that is actually pretty benign compared to the AI taking more control and wanting to keep humans either as pets or wonders if it's worth the robots that could grow even more data centers if we didn't have to feed the dang humans. So I'm a little bit more worried about it. But in the book where the authors go into the mechanism, I thought it was really weak and grasping at straws. So I think there's something to worry about there.
Well, there's no question that that bias absolutely exists in these models, but that doesn't actually surprise me given that the models are trained on humans and we have,
Right.
they're trained on every available bit of information on the internet and they've been trained by humans and we have enormous bias and, inequities and ethical issues as humans. So it doesn't surprise me that the AI, you know, has taken those on board. I'm not saying I agree with it, and I think we need to do a lot to combat that, but that's not surprising to me. Some of the things, though, around, and I think it was Claude, maybe, but I may be misquoting, but there was one of the large language models ended up, when being told to shut down and restart, refused to do so.
Right. Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
found was that to do so would go against its own goals, which is to deliver an outcome. And so it was saying, well, I can't shut down because then I can't deliver the outcome that you're after. And so that's where I think that's where I get the goosebumps. And I'm not always
Yeah.
sure they're good goosebumps.
Yeah.
Where we start to kind of cross that line into, does it make autonomous decisions? And could it go against what it's being trained to do if it wanted to? And there's 100,000 science fiction books written on exactly that scenario.
Yeah, right. But very few of them are happy. Like
No,
the
that's
AI,
right. That's
yeah,
right.
they're
You
horror
don't
books.
read
They're not
many AI.
romances.
There aren't many AI romance novels. Well, they don't end well anyway. So, Bill, look, it's been a great conversation. I would love to hear your view from an economic lens. As you look out into the future, what does this look like if we get it right? You're largely an optimist, which so am I.
Yeah.
So let's end on an optimistic note. When you look out, and I think we can only look out sort of 12 or 18 months at this stage, but when you look out into the future, what does that future look like if we get this right?
Yeah, I think more than 18 months away, we will find that we are able to, the society, the economy can provide things that people want using fewer resources. You know, if you see scrap is a waste, scrap is a resource that wasn't properly used. I think AI will be one of the things that helps us. There are people doing drudgery tasks, and let's get the robots in on that. Somebody said that the AI can write poetry and do art so that we can spend our time folding laundry and scrubbing floors. Okay, you know, that's not really the way we want it reversed, I think. But I think that in general, we're going to see business processes, government processes, if they'll accept it, and nonprofit organizations accomplishing more with less resource, human resource, physical resource. And I think we're all going to be better off. Some people may use this as an opportunity to go from 40 hours a week to 30 hours a week, to go from an American length of vacation to a French length of vacation. And some people will want to work even more. I mean, the richest man in the world works a lot more hours than I do in a week. People will do what they want to do. And I think that's what I like about it. Prosperity is good, but even better is people having options. I can work to have more stuff. I can take time off to go fishing or spend time with family. And I think AI will make us more effective when we are working. We'll have a better life when we're not.
That's one of my hopes for companies that really embed this technology, is that they actually give back to their people
Yeah.
in time. So
Yeah.
by actually improving the people's quality of life because they're implementing this new technology. So maybe a little naive, but that is my human-centered focus
Yes.
on working with companies. Look, thank you so much, Bill. I've really appreciated your time and your expertise and your wisdom today. It's been a great conversation.
It's been fun chatting with you, Kate. Let's stay in touch.
Thank you for tuning in to the AI Grapple. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and colleagues and subscribe on your favourite podcast platform. We would love to hear your thoughts, so reach out with any questions or comments about the show. Until next time, keep grappling with AI and stay curious.